Bonjour amigos, welcome to the Calipolis. In my last video, we went over the natural reaction that most people have when confronted with truths or ideas even that challenge the ego. If an idea, even if that idea is true, challenges your core belief system or your worldviews, the natural reaction is to reject that idea. If the character that you subconsciously know as yourself, if the current version of yourself needs to be modified or needs to change because of new information, if you accepted this new information as true, that would mean something about your perceived version of yourself would be wrong. The ego will reject that information. They will reject the person providing that information before you can even consider it. That is a natural reaction. It's not a character flaw. This is something that the psyche does to protect the current version of yourself. I believe this is why the prisoners in Plato's Allegory reject the enlightened prisoner that comes to free them, right? It's not because the enlightened prisoner is a physical threat to them. He's not coming to harm them, but it's because the information that he is coming to provide the prisoners is a threat to the current version of themselves. Their entire worldview is based on these shadows. So they've built their entire lives, their identity, their character is built around these shadows. And the enlightened prisoner escapes the cave. He sees things that he cannot unsee, and he comes back to share that wisdom, that light, with his fellow prisoners. That is a threat to those worldviews, right? He's essentially saying, look, everything you've based your lives around, your entire understanding of the world, and your identity itself is based on shadows. This obviously isn't a threat to the prisoner's physical self, but if the prisoners were to accept this information as true, it would dismantle their entire worldview, their entire belief system, and what I believe most, crucially, is it would dismantle their perceived current versions of themselves. So the current version of yourself, your identity, especially at a subconscious level, isn't just some psychological concept or something like self-help coaches like to talk about. It's a real tool that the self has developed to guide you through life. It's to provide you with some kind of consistency or predictability in an unpredictable world, right? It's a tool to help you move throughout life in a predictable and consequentially useful or way. Like the fact that you have an identity that is guarded by the ego is a utility. It's not a bad thing. However, like any tool, I believe its utility should be judged based on its ability to help you achieve your goals or your desired outcomes. So just to get you thinking about where I'm going here, think of asbestos, for example, right? That was a material used in the construction of housing as a tool to keep people safe, right? It's fire resistant. It's a very effective form of insulation. It was incredibly cheap and durable. Right? It's a very effective tool in the construction of housing with the objective of keeping people safe in their homes. Now, years later, we now know that the material can cause very harmful effects to the very people that it is supposed to keep safe. So you have this tool that, on the surface, it looks incredibly effective at achieving the goal, the desired outcome, which is to keep people safe. But when presented with new information, we understand that this tool can actually be counterproductive to achieving the objective or the desired outcome. It can actually be incredibly harmful to the very people that we are trying to keep safe. So the tool should be judged or assessed based on its ability to achieve the desired outcome. And because we know that asbestos is actually harmful to people and it has a very high risk of causing life-threatening illness, we no longer use it as a tool because we've done that assessment and we know now that it is not actually effective in achieving the desired outcome. So we abandon that tool and we welcome new tools. Do you see where I'm going with this? When society was enlightened with this new information about asbestos being harmful, there was pushback against this information. People didn't want to abandon this tool, even though they had new information that was, trying to help them. The transition from asbestos being, a staple ingredient in the building of homes to abandoning and banning the use of asbestos over time took decades because of this resistance, right? So, I'm obviously linking this to the enlightened prisoner who comes back to help the chained prisoners, right? The enlightened prisoners coming back and saying, "Hey guys, I know, you all think that, asbestos is this incredible tool, this miracle tool for building homes, but I've seen things that I cannot unsee. I've seen the light, and it's actually quite risky to use. It potentially can cause major harm, life-threatening illness to people." And then the prisoners are like, "No, we're not accepting that information. We like asbestos. We're going to keep using it." So why would the prisoners reject this information? In hindsight, it seems incredibly silly to do so. But this material was literally embedded within the infrastructure of the entire society, right? So to accept the information that it's actually incredibly bad for people is a challenge to, the ego of society's ego. That, hey, we've been doing this super dangerous thing for decades and we've put everybody at risk. Incredibly uncomfortable thought that people were confronted with, and the immediate reaction, the natural reaction, is to reject that information. Maybe not the best analogy, I'm just coming up with this as I go, but hopefully you get my point, which is, the enlightened prisoner coming back to free his fellow prisoners, and what I anticipate I'll be doing on this channel, I'll be presenting you with information that challenges material that is embedded in the infrastructure of your identity. Right? So you have all this material embedded in your identity, and I might be coming back and saying, some of these materials are bad for you or bad for others. And the immediate reaction is going to be to reject me because of that, because it requires you, because think about the asbestos example, right? It's literally in the walls of people's houses. And so imagine being in, you're in your home and now you're surrounded with this incredibly toxic material, right? It's a carcinogen. It causes cancer. Where do you start? It might just be easier to reject it and forget it and just go on with life. When I present you with information that does that to yourself, your identity, right? That you're going to have to deconstruct the walls of your identity if the information you're presented with is true. Are you going to do it, or are you going to reject it? Right? The natural reaction is to reject it.